All in favor by the sign of aye. Opposed is nay. Motion carries. We have ordinances on first reading, 6A, which has already been read into record. So now at this point, we will move on to resolutions. Madam Clerk, please read 7A.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a quitclaim deed to David S. Adams for the conveyance of road right-of-way previously abandoned by ordinance number 9220 on August 22, 1989, and required to resolve title issues due to the inadvertent omission of the former right-of-ways and the deed's legal description.
Okay, I'm good with that if y'all are. 7B, please.
A resolution approving an economic impact plan for the East Chattanooga Rising Tax Increment Financing Development Area.
Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had my light on for A.
Oh, okay, well, we're back up to A.
Okay. The ordinance amending for the code for the short-term vacation rental, there is an issue in there that I would like more fully discussed for the record.
Okay, you have the floor.
All right. I understand that there's a matter in there talking about disbursement of income only to certain districts. I believe that's not legal. Or in the alternative, I believe that it needs more discussion.
Okay.
Before I make a motion later on tonight to remove it, I would like a little more thinking about it because I served on that committee and I don't remember that discussion. Richard is here now. Richard, could you approach?
Yes, ma'am.
I understand that there's a 519.
11-519.
Yeah, 11-519 that says that the income from short-term vacation rentals can only be used in those districts for certain things like ball fields, that sort of thing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
As opposed to be used in the whole city?
That is correct. It's to be used in the short-term vacation district overlay.
Okay. And has that been determined to be legal?
I'll defer to our city attorney on that.
There was initially a state statute which talked about the allocation of short-term vacation rentals fees that could only be used within the tourism district in the state. The eventual statute that was passed by the legislature pulled all of those provisions out, and there was no provision that indicated what could be done with the short-term vacation rental fees. Because of that, Mr. Reisman in our office has been in contact with the Municipal Technical Advisory Service on multiple occasions, attempting to find out if they had any guidance. And they said that you could choose by ordinance where you wanted those funds to go. And that's what this ordinance proposes, as requested at least by some of the committee.
So does that fall outside of unpermitted class legislation?
The provisions of this ordinance right now, the way it's written under 11-519, it says all revenue derived from the tax collected by the city upon the privilege of occupancy in any short-term vacation rental district within the short-term vacation rental district established by the city council must be allocated and used by the city to provide, update, construct, and renovate equipment or enhancements to city-owned youth and family development facilities, city-owned youth association recreation fields, city-owned senior citizen facilities, and other city-owned community gathering places within the short-term vacation rental district. That fees are generated within those districts and would go back to them. And that's the provisions that's included in the ordinance.
So what that does is people who choose, or districts who choose not to have short-term vacation rentals for, I think, very good reasons, are put at a disadvantage.
Well, ma'am, there's no fees generated within those districts for short-term vacation.
I get that. I get that. So what it's effectively saying is if you'll agree to put those in your district, you'll get more money for your district.
That allocation is within the ordinance right now.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Councilman Byrd.
I'm good. Phil answered the
You
question.
good?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Gilbert.
Going back to Councilwoman's question, I know in the past, like for example, Washington Hills football field, at one time they were receiving their funds up there, and that fund was for that particular field, for whatever they needed in that center. But then they took it away, saying you couldn't do that at that time. So I'm curious of how we can do it on this end, but not on the other end. Because at the end of the day, we're the city. So you're saying we're going to subtract the amount of money we was going to spend on the centers and let that money from the short term be the difference in it? Are we saying we're going to put extra money in there plus the money there for all other centers going into these centers too?
Unless Washington Hills is within the short-term vacation rental.
No, this was something totally different. This was, we had a field developed for that area, only for that area. The fund should have stayed in that area, but it didn't do that. It went somewhere else. It was at first, but it went somewhere else. It went to general funds.
Okay, sir.
So that's, I'm talking about past stuff versus this right here. What's the difference?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
Can anybody answer that question?
Just speaking off the cuff. Generally speaking, if monies are collected and they're not specifically designated by the council through some sort of ordinance, resolution, charter, or referendum, then those monies go into general fund. And general fund dollars, or as the name implies, they're not specifically earmarked.
So you're saying it should go to general funds?
Well, that's generally, yes, unless it's
Oh, I thought,
specifically
'cause
earmarked for a specific purpose.
That was exactly what you said. That was during the time doing that Washington football field. They was collected for the center, but then it stopped based on what you said should go into general funds.
Okay.
So what makes this different going to general funds?
Well, from my perspective is, what I see you doing is preparing an ordinance that specifically restricts the use of those funds.
So, I mean, we can prepare all of other entities in the city for the money to go designate to the same place, that area?
This council can do pretty much anything that is legal under state law.
Would that be state law?
But whether it's reasonable or not, I don't know, but,
No, really reasonable, boy.
yeah.
What's your reason might not be my reason, so
Right.
I'm asking, could we not do that?
For what?
What
Are
I'm
we
saying
talking-
is, it don't make sense that we take some areas that generate funds and we put it in general funds. Now we got another area that's collecting funds, but we're gonna designate just for that particular area.
Well, there again,
This going back to the same situation with the 21st century money, just designated just for downtown. That's what it sounds like.
it is a specific restriction on a
And-
designated source of revenue.
And is this money going towards the extra, or should be going towards the monitoring of the short-term vacation, for as hiring people to actually do it, instead of getting the people that we already currently have to monitor this, that can be monitoring other things in the city, and get that money to pay for these people?
Well, you're getting beyond where I can really answer your
I'm just
question right
asking
now.
a
More,
question.
would you like to? Yeah.
Mr. Councilman, I mean, that's a great use of these funds. I mean, it's up to this council how you want to designate them. They are, according to state law, a pseudo part of hotel motel, so it is revenue that can be designated for different things, like hotel motel was done for 21st century, from what I understand from our city attorney's reading of the law. And I mean, we just, we will designate it as you all say that we should designate it, and we'll track it and follow it. But absolutely, enforcement is something that we need, and something that has been a challenge for us, as you know, and enforcement is something that we have to do with personnel. So we would always like to have more personnel for that work.
I know we discussed that during the time before we
Yes,
started short-term, for
Yes,
that
sir.
money going towards, instead of using what we have now they can take them people and go other areas that we desperately need in other areas, because we don't have enough people already, and put that money towards the people that does short-term, for us investigating, for us looking into it and things like that, for their salaries, FTEs.
That's up to you.
Who
Up to y'all.
who suggested that? There was us that suggested, or who just? Oh, Chip suggested. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, you good? Okay,
Right now.
Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to bring it back around to the importance of it, right? Like a couple of colleagues here have voiced about why is it just being designated into certain areas, and we created a 21st Century Fund so redevelopment can happen around downtown. Well, in my district, historically, we've been at a disadvantage. And we've historically been redlined in certain areas, so we're not receiving benefits from the council budget a lot of the times anyway, from our budget anyways. And if it was up to me, we most definitely would be utilizing it as a form of reparations to black communities so those communities can begin to thrive again. But unfortunately, that's not the view or the vision of our council here. So to have those areas that operate in short-term vacation rentals, and a lot of it is in the areas that are mostly inner city pretty much, then we should be able to utilize that stream to help with things that's within the community. Now, I hope that it's not about the fact that, okay, we wanted to go to youth and family development, because that department is great now without that revenue stream. So if we want to place it and house it up under another department, I'm perfectly fine with that, as long as the areas that are operating short-term vacation rentals, that those communities are benefiting. It doesn't make sense for East Chattanooga to have short-term vacation rental properties. We can't utilize the income stream, and the money is going downtown to 21st Century. We're already at a disadvantage. And then maybe we could just talk about just moving the restriction altogether and include everybody. Everybody benefit from it, because everybody utilize the YFD centers, everybody go to the senior centers, and then it'll alleviate that problem. But I want to make sure that my district receives some kind of funding from the use of having short-term vacation rental. That's what it's about, because it's going to benefit everybody, if so, because it's going to improve even the districts that don't have short-term vacation rentals operate.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. Same thing, District 8, same way. It's a lot of revenue and things that don't make it that far, but I do understand that some neighborhoods and communities do need extra funding, do need extra things, and we do also have a general fund that we can pull from for that. I just want this council to definitely understand that I didn't, even when Chip brought it to the forefront, that this is something to help these dilapidated parks, something to help these poor communities that need that uplifting. And I didn't think it was looked at as a punishment to say, if you don't do short-term vacation rentals, you don't get any money or you don't get any funding. I think it was saying that, hey, the people in these communities or the districts that they're in that are participating, how can we be best stewards of this to make sure that our constituents benefit from it? You know, and I think we still have our general fund and we still have other revenues to where other districts who choose not to participate in it can benefit from those other revenue streams. But I would love to see each one of my colleagues get something amazing in their community, get something going on. I don't think this is a blockage to say we get, you don't. But I think it's just one tool that we all can use to help uplift someone, somebody in some areas. So that's my story.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Verse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that there are some unintended consequences that could happen from this, and I don't know that we've discussed it enough. Let me tell you some of the things that are entering my mind. We very much need affordable housing, and yet we know that particularly in some of these areas, people are coming in and buying up housing and using them for short-term vacation rentals and cutting down our affordable housing stock. I think that we need to be careful about parceling out money just to certain areas of the community, because all areas of the community are bringing in people to visit and use these short-term vacation rentals. I like the councilwoman's suggestion of not putting the money in the general fund, but using it to support children and youth facilities. I like that very much, ball fields, this sort of thing. But we participate as a city. We don't participate as little enclaves, or we shouldn't be participating as little enclaves that go out and sell their areas in order to bring money in that has all kinds of unintended consequences, like the housing stock. I could go on. But I think that this particular 519 needs a little more discussion so that we can get where everybody wants it to be. I think that Districts 7 and 8 do need more income there. I have no problem with that. But I think it should be decisions made across the board relative to family and youth. We could go to the various youth centers that we have in all of our districts, because our constituents are saying, you know what? We worked hard to get where we are, and we don't want our neighborhoods overturned by short-term vacation rentals. I think they should be respected as well. They shouldn't be told, well, guess what? Since you want to save your property value that you've worked extremely hard for, guess what? Your kid's ball field doesn't get put up to snuff. That's just wrong. That's not democratic. That being said, I think that definitely it should all go to children and youth and let them parcel it out accordingly. If not, then I'm wondering, as chair of the budget, because originally we were going to put this money toward paying for enforcement, which seems to be a big word that nobody cares about paying for, we were going to use these extra funds to enforce what we had worked very hard for over a year or more to put into place. So again, I think we're going from emotion, we're not going from a fact, we're going from politics, not from fact, and I would like to at least give this one section due consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple quick questions. Ms. Daisy, are there other sources of income that would qualify for redirection to a specific use?
Other sources of income.
This is a source of income that's being directed specifically. Are there other sources that are identifiable that would also qualify for, if we're going to start a precedence?
There again, what's practical and what is actually legal is one thing. Now, of course, you can take a portion of your tax levy and earmark it. You could take a portion of your sales tax and earmark it.
We can, as a council, we can start slicing and dicing up pieces of the pie and redirecting it?
I wouldn't advise it, but, you know, right now, I think Hamilton County takes a portion of, the portion of the Hamilton County sales tax goes to, property tax goes to school. A
Okay.
portion of the sales tax is earmarked for schools. Those are
Yeah.
the kinds of things that is allowable, it's just not done very often.
Okay.
Past
I was
those
it's
states.
just a general question, because I
Yes.
was, in the
But-
3 years I've been here, I've always understood that to be not to be the case, that we can't just allocate a revenue source and funnel it to somewhere. So that's my mistake.
City Attorney, am I wrong here?
Unless there is a state statute that
Prohibits it, right, yeah. Unless
Okay.
there's a state, thank you for that way of saying it, but yeah, I
Okay.
think that says something.
The second question is, who will oversee this new bucket of funds and the expenditures?
Well, actually, it's a question, quite frankly, I kind of had in my head a minute ago, and that is how it would be administered. And the question is, I'm assuming, at this point, you are assuming that you would apply it to those districts that have vacation rentals.
Sure.
but not specific collections specific to the district in which the specific collection was made, but more as a pool.
But there's got to be a process that's
And
been thought
that was
of.
my, and that's the question. So in terms of the administration, I have not had any discussions with administration about it. And quite frankly,
Okay, so we don't know who's going to spend it and on what.
how it would be administered, I've not had any discussions in that regard.
Does anybody know how much we're talking about? Donna Williams does. Less than $100,000. Okay.
You good, Councilman?
Yeah, just a last statement. I mean, I see where we're going. I think the idea is noble. I mean, I'd much rather see it in the, elsewhere than in the general fund where it's probably, but I think that I have to agree with my colleague on the other end of the dais. I think we need some more discussion on the ramifications and consequences of this also, not to mention precedents, because my brain is just flipping with ideas right now. So I'm not sure they're all that great, but anyways, I'm good, Chairman. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Ledford. Vice Chairman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay. Phil, I want to make sure we're all on the same page here. We're talking about hotel motel funds.
These hotel motel funds for short-term rentals, yes.
These hotel motel funds do not currently go into the general fund right now, correct?
No, sir.
Thank you. So it's not a new bucket of funds that we're talking about. This is a revenue stream that's already existing. Is that correct?
It's existing since short-term rentals started.
And since hotel motel tax went into effect however many years ago, correct? So every hotel motel, they pay a hotel motel tax, and all of that money right now goes to the riverfront, to the 21st Century Waterfront Project.
Leased by an ordinance.
Okay. And if we did nothing today on this ordinance, these funds would still generate, and they would go to the 21st Century Waterfront
By ordinance of the city.
by ordinance. So this ordinance creates a different avenue for this revenue that's already generated to go. It does not go into the general fund. I think we've got our funds mixed up. The short-term vacation rental ordinance does create some funds through application fees, yada, 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 that goes into the general fund. We're not talking about those funds. We're talking about funds generated by the hotel motel tax that hotels have to pay and short-term vacation rentals have to pay. All we're doing by this ordinance is taking the funds from the hotel motel tax generated by short-term vacation rental in a district and reusing those in the district that they're generated. And I would say if you would like to be part of that, join the district. It's that easy. But at many of the neighborhood association meetings that I went to, particularly some in Councilwoman Coonrod's district, they brought up the fact that if these funds are generated in our district, we would like to see the money spent in our district. And I think they are needed in those districts to bring some of those ball fields up, to bring some of those rec centers up. I don't see that it's penalizing anybody. If you don't want to do short-term vacation rental, good, that's fine. That's everybody's choice. But these funds are generated in a specific district, and I've heard council people on this dais before say it's not fair that all that money generated through the hotel motel has to be spent in one place. So I don't know why, if it's generated in the district, why it can't be spent in the district that it's generated in. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Councilman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm gonna be done with it after this. It really frustrates me about this council that even the thought and this is I've seen this go for 3 years now. The one incremental chance that, oh, these poor neighborhoods are gonna get a tad, just a smidget bit of money to even try to help them begin to thrive. We wanna chop it down. And I hear, the two colleagues saying that, well, we need additional time. We've been having this discussion for 3 years. I myself brought up to the table from the time of election, let's utilize that stream of income. It's a new stream. We had bond hearings about it. Do anybody remember that? A couple of times, and we brought the question up on how can we proceed with this. We even thought about creating, how many times I brought to the floor, let's create legislation to just go to the state level and have them handle it, or let's reach out to our state senate. Time and time again. One of the requests that I made was that let's use the funds for housing. No one wanted to do that. That's how we came up with the plan to utilize the funds for families. Now, and I do understand this, it wasn't about me trying to get the legislation done. It was important because it's important and we needed it to happen in our communities, but the buy-in wasn't from the council. Chip moved forward with it, and everybody wanted to buy in on it, which is cool. We just needed to get something in place. But it's unnecessary for us to keep beating the dead horse. It's 3 years. We've talked about it repeatedly, and it's time for us to enforce what we've changed. If it's not saying because you're not in it, you're not going to benefit from it. You benefit from it anyway because you're going to all the recreation centers in your area. My recreation center has been neglected for quite some time. So why wouldn't the house that's operating across the street as a short-term vacation rental, that income stream, go to improve their area? It should be. That's only a fair ask. It's not like we're asking to give us $10 million. It's less than $100,000. Well, what we're saying that we want to put back into these communities, and of course you've heard from our councilwoman, 7, 8, and 9, we need it. You're thriving over there in District 4. You're thriving over there in District 6. You're thriving in 5. But our districts that's been historically redlined, historically neglected, we're at a disadvantage, we're marginalized. We're sitting here having a discussion saying we need to have more time after 3 years of talking about it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Gilbert.
Thank you, Chair. I understand what Chip is saying for as he wanted to be in the district that the money is collected. Donna, can you come up for a minute, please?
Yes, sir.
Since you've been here and before you come, there's a great need of having inspectors. We constantly say up here that we don't have enough people to do what they're supposed to do to inspect what we're supposed to inspect. We just Robert Paul to pay Peter. Have you not heard us say that before?
Yes, sir.
So currently, how many individuals work with short-term vacation for FTEs?
We have one.
One.
And one that's designated to a full-time, and then we have 3 zoning inspectors. And when needed, even though short-term vacation rental is not a zoning issue, those folks are trained on STVR as well.
So you're looking at 1.5 FTE in a sense, or almost 2.
Generally speaking, yeah.
Right, okay.
I think
So,
that's fair.
so we keep saying up here, we need more inspectors. 'Cause I remember when we discussed short-term vacation, we said, how are we gonna regulate it? How are we gonna regulate it? What are we gonna do to regulate it? We did discuss that the money that's generated from short-term will regulate it. But it seemed like we got away from that and put it somewhere else. So could we not use more inspectors? In other words, the ones that we got, 1.5 FTEs, take this $100,000, you said $100,000, correct?
It's less than that. We can calculate it.
Well, roughly,
Forecast, yes, sir. But
Around
it's significantly less than $100,000.
well, say $80,000. Around that pitch, almost FTE and a fourth in a sense.
Yes.
So we can take that money and pay that FTE and hire another inspector to inspect the whole entire city that covers all of the city. Could Could we not use that more, be sensible to use it to hire more inspectors to inspect the city that we all need inspections on?
Yeah, well, not to be too technical, we have zoning inspectors that go all over. Short-term vacation rental is not a zoning designation, but those inspectors we have 3, they're trained on STVR as well. One of those, Caleb, who you guys know, one of the 3, he is a STVR. He processes, he receives phone calls, emails, he works with our provider, host compliance. That's what Caleb does. And then we have building inspectors and code inspectors. So we have different types of inspectors. But as it relates specifically to STVR, we have 1 full-time person and 2 backup people.
Right, I was saying, basically, if you run your numbers on your count on your schedule, you got 1.5 FTE, basically. Even though you use them different, you got 1.5
Yes, sir.
FTE.
I think that's
So what I'm getting at is that we should be using that money to pay for that 1 FTE or 1.5 FTE, so that we can take that type of money and put it through for the entire city and hire someone else to cover the inspections where we got too much trash somewhere, or we have people throwing tires somewhere. We got people selling things on the side of the road on the highway. They have no license somewhere. We got signage problems. We got all these problems, but we can utilize that money that we talked about and put it on inspections instead of somewhere else. And we can take that money and put it on another inspector to cover the whole entire city, even in the short-term area too.
Yes, sir. As Ms. Madison has said, the money can go wherever you guys like the money to go. $80,000 would not cover a full-time and a half FTE with salaries and benefits, but any
It'll cover 1.
It certainly would cover 1, yes, sir.
Thank you.
If in fact the number is $80,000, and that, again, that's a forecast. Because remember, less than 1%, I think it's 0.86%, of all properties in the city are STVR.
And as we increase the short term, we are increasing because we got people buying property all over the place.
Yes, sir.
Then the revenue going to increase. So that way, it would add another FT once we get enough money
It
into
could
the pot.
potentially, yes, sir.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Burrs.
I think a couple of things that have been said here are a bit misleading. When we're talking about the waterfront, we're talking about bonds besides usage in the waterfront. It's a whole big different issue. And there is only a small amount of money, less than $100,000. It's the precedent setting. I think that's the most powerful thing of designating pieces of taxes for special interests. I would much rather see if it, and I agree, that children and youth is important. If these are the areas, as my colleagues have said, that are really in need, then I think it's up to our Department of Youth and Family Development to allocate whatever extra funds come in to those areas. I think when you start setting a precedent of fritzing around with taxes and designating a piece here and a piece there, although it is very well intentioned and very noble, and I can't disagree with the concept at all, it's not good business. I think I've stated my other issues, but we're about business here. We're about business. We're about a budget that addresses the needs of everyone, and I agree with my colleagues that there are certain areas that need more help than others. And I am here to make sure they get that sort of help. This is not the way to do it. It sets a bad business precedent that does not relate to the hotel motel tax, the big one, because that involved bondage, that involved all sorts of things. I think you got to be real careful when you start setting precedents for special interests, even though those special interests may be very worthy, very worthy. So that's it. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Councilwoman Burrs. Councilman Byrd.
Definitely still trying to understand, definitely hear my colleagues and respect their views and opinions. I just want to I was seeing where we can hire one person full-time with the revenues that are generated from this fee or money that's coming in. But just think how many kids we can inspire and how many people we can get. We just talked about a young lady that is going to college because of the rec centers and because of the ball fields. I mean, it just seems kind of, and then I thought, Daisy, isn't it something about a revenue stream that's not consistent or constant revenue stream to create some type of job for? I think we had a conversation about that if it's not a sustainable revenue stream or something that is constant or something that we can't, it's hard to create jobs from or something of that nature. Have we ever had that discussion? You don't recall? Okay. And it's just, I guess at the end of the day, thank you, Daisy, if that wasn't the conversation, that this revenue stream that's less than $7,500,000 can touch so many lives, and just because of the fact that we didn't create a project and create a bond to develop before we decided to create this revenue stream, you'll be surprised at what $5,000 can do for these little youth and family development centers. So, I don't know, just flabbergasted at this point.
Thank you, Councilman. Vice Chairman Henderson.
Thank you. I want to make sure that, that I understand this precedence that we're setting. Mr. Attorney, the hotel motel tax right now is designated through ordinance right now, correct?
Yes.
Where it goes. And it goes to a district.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
So it goes to the 21st century waterfront area.
Area or district. I mean, it's a specific area or district that it's going to, correct? By ordinance.
Yes, sir.
And once those bonds are paid off, would it continue to go to that area?
Unless y'all change the ordinance, yes.
So, yeah, unless we change the ordinance. So by our ordinance, even after the bonds are paid off, it would continue to go to the waterfront district?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So right now, through ordinance, these monies are going to a district, a specific area?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, see no further lights. We'll move on now to, believe we're on Resolution 7B, Madam Clerk?
A resolution authorizing the exception of the City of Chattanooga from certain procedures of the application process for tax increment financing when the City of Chattanooga initiates a TIF application because the City of Chattanooga is the applicant for tax increment financing related to the redevelopment of the former Harriet Tubman site, also known as the East Chattanooga Rising TIF application.
Seeing no lights. I did do B earlier. Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Just 7D, please.
A resolution authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement for the private sale and transfer of 15 properties offered through the City of Chattanooga Affordable Housing Initiative for the production and preservation of affordable housing units for a combined bid amount of $13,455.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually had my light on for item C.
Okay, well, we'll back up to C to get your question answered.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Is Ms. Allen still in the room? I guess it's you, Maura. Great. Because she's the only one who can, right? Come on down. Come on down. It's not so much more of a question. I just kind of wanted, if you'll hit the bullet points for me on why this is needed and the benefits to the city and moving forward on the Tubman site.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Well, as you all know, the site has sat vacant for a number of years. The Housing Authority closed the property due to deferred maintenance. It's sat blighted in that neighborhood for several years. It was a phased closure over time. Many people have called that location home, so I'm on this dais. So it means a lot to the neighborhood, and we worked really hard. I know worked really hard with this council to bring it back into productive use. So we have economic development prospect for the site that will bring living wage jobs, has agreed to provide job training, and will also bring that site back onto productive use, back onto the tax rolls. Nippon will be the owner of the site and will pay full taxes. The taxes, pertinent to your last conversation, will be invested directly back into that community by way of further development on the site, hopefully providing mixed-use development, some amenities to the neighborhood, some housing to the neighborhood. It's too early to say at this point. We'll be developing sort of a community-based plan with folks from that neighborhood, but we are deeply appreciative of the council's leadership. The city kind of went out on a limb, listened to people, and took a risk, honestly, and taking ownership of this property that at the time was blighted and a drain on this neighborhood. And we think that that investment has paid off, and we're starting to see the fruits of that labor now.
So what processes are we abating from the normal procedure?
Yes, sir. Sharita can go into specifics about that, but there's some, I don't want to be misleading, but I can speak just from memory, that there's some sections of our TIF policy that are written in such a way that it's for private developers who bring a TIF project to the city. And so we have followed that policy as closely as we possibly can, but there's some things that just frankly are a little hinky whenever you have a proactive city project, which we all agree, I think, is the best project to have because the city's coming forward and saying, this is our priority, this is how we want to invest these dollars. But it's written, the policy is written more closely to mirror what we did on the MLK project, as an example, as opposed to having a city project. And so, but we followed all the notice requirements. We formed an ARC committee. We went through all the major steps. Sharita will have to shed some light on exactly what processes are not followed.
So this streamlines the process. My allergies are killing me. So.
I hear you. It's that time of year. Yeah, we worked as quickly as we could, but we didn't skip any major steps that this council set forward in those policies and procedures.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Richardson. And this is a great project, and I just want to say I know that we've all been in support of the Tubman redevelopment site and this project going forward, even though I feel like sometimes we don't do enough, but this council's been very supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ledford. Seeing no other lights, excuse me, Mr. IT. I have the IDB list up here. Could you change it to City Council, please? With that being said, let's move on to 7E, please.
A resolution authorizing a spend limit increase for the existing contract Caresoft Technology Corporation to provide Excel software licensing and support for a total increase of $20,281.32 for each contract year beginning May 24, 2019 through May 23, 2020, for a total contract amount of $225,000.
Seeing no lights, let's move on to F.
A resolution authorizing the Chief Information Officer to amend the city's existing blanket agreement with Central Square Technologies, allowing for consolidation of multiple items under a single agreement, marrying the acquisition and consolidation of multiple firms by Central Square, increasing the annual spend limit from $80,000 to $250,000, with expenditures not to exceed $750,000.
Thank you. G, please.
A resolution authorizing the chief of the Chattanooga Police Department to enter into an agreement with Foster and Freeman USA, Inc. to provide a recover latent fingerprint technology basic laboratory system for equipment, site installation, and training cost inclusive of travel and shipping for a total amount not to exceed $66,600.
Okay. Seeing no lights, that closes this part of our agenda session. There is no departmental report. Councilman Ledford, I believe I will keep the chair and do Public Works and Transportation. And following that, you will have Planning and Zoning. Okay, great. Okay, we'll now move on to Public Works and Transportation. Can I get approval of the minutes? Is there a second? Hey, team, I need a second. Okay, thank you. All in favor by the sign of aye? Opposers, nay? Motion carries. Mr. Bailey, we have one item under transportation. Madam Clerk, would you please read 7N?
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Transportation to enter into an agreement with Wilson Construction Group, LLC, relative to contract number T17-01201 for construction services associated with Shallowford Bonnie Way sidewalk in the amount of $705,222.70, with a contingency amount of $70,522.27, for a total amount of $775,744.97.
Okay, Councilman Gilbert, you good? Okay, great. Seeing there's no questions, you just had an opportunity to stretch your legs.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. I know you like that. Okay, Mr. Holland, now we'll move on to Public Works. Oh, we got the first string in.
I'm the reserve today.
Oh, you're reserve, okay.
Yes, sir.
I see first string.
Thank you for that.
Okay, we'll now go on to Tuesday, December the 3rd, which is today. Ordinances on final reading, 5A.
An ordinance closing and abandoning a sewer easement located in the 5800 block of Highway 153 as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
Okay, seeing no lights, we'll move on to 5B.
An ordinance closing and abandoning a sewer easement located at 713 Hamilton Avenue as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
Thank you. We'll move on to 5C.
An ordinance closing and abandoning a sewer easement located in the 1200 block of East 13th Street as detailed on the attached map.
Once again, seeing no lights, D.
An ordinance closing and abandoning a sewer easement located in the 2200 block of Fagan Street as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
Thank you. Let's move on to resolutions. We're now at 7H.
A resolution to approve change order number 1 for Integrated Properties LLC of Chattanooga, Tennessee, relative to contract number R19006201, multiple ball field and facility improvements for an increased amount of $30,143 to provide a contingency amount of $20,000 for a revised contract amount of $191.48
Councilman Gilbert.
Thank you, Chair. Is this dealing with ADA compliance also?
This one does not deal specifically with ADA. There's a separate contract that's dealing with ADA. This is primarily some structural things, dugout covers, some small minor office renovations in the DRC. This particular change order has to do with some expenses related to the carpeting in the council's area, a fireplace at the East Lake Senior Center, some sidewalk work at the Tyner Recreation Center that was related to the front entrance work that was part of this contract, as well as, those are all the items that are covered by the change order.
Going back to ADA, have we actually did any work up on Lakeside for the request for ADA to put in there because wheelchairs and people that's crippled cannot walk through because the asphalt is tearing up? Do you know anything about that?
I'm not personally aware of it, but we'd be glad to look into it.
Can you check on that with Jason to see if that's been done? Because I know it's been about a year and a half now.
Okay.
And see if that's been finished and when it's going to take place.
And that was at the Lakeside Ball Field zone.
Right. In
Swan.
between the field, between the chairs, you cannot put a wheelchair through there because it's crumbling all up. You also cannot put, if you have a cane, you get caught into the crack, you fall.
Okay.
So I know we mentioned it, like I said, a year and a half ago, or a
Right.
year and a quarter. And
I know there has been a contract that has gone and looked at ADA specifically in parks in that contract, but I'm not familiar with that specific location. So
yeah, definitely let me know.
we'll
Email
follow
let me
up.
know. I appreciate it.
Be glad to.
Okay, that's it, Councilman?
Yes.
You good? Thank you, sir. No other questions on that matter. Let's move on to I.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with Artec Design Group, Inc. for professional design services for contract number C17017101 Wood Recycling Center Facility for the contract amount of $84,715.
Hit your light, please, sir, again. You got anything on that? Okay, let's move on to the next one.
A resolution to approve change order number 1 for Clanco Construction of Tennessee, Inc. relative to contract number S15016-201 East Lake Park Water Quality Improvement Project for an increased amount of $307,620.98, plus a no contingency amount of $110,594.34 for a revised contract amount of $2,329,774.18.
Okay, did you,
Yeah, I just want to make sure on the wood cycling, are they not doing anything with the scales? It's just for putting in office space and enlarging something.
There is some renovation of the Scout House building in order to make the best use of that space, in addition to making some additions to the building and the addition of the mechanics bay. So there will be some renovations to the mechanics, or to the Scout House, but not to the scales themselves.
Just to the scale houses, the house of scales.
The Scout House where the operator and some of that existing internal office space. That's my understanding of the scope. Yes, sir.
okay, thank you, Councilman. Okay, you've read J, there was no question, so now let's move on to item K, please.
A resolution to approve change order number 1 for Williams Restoration and Waterproofing, Inc. of LaGrange, Tennessee, relating to contract number E18-017201, City Hall and City Council Buildings exterior refurbishments for an increased amount of $53,950, plus a contingency amount of $5,000 for a revised contract amount of $354,700.
Seeing no lights, let's move on to L.
A resolution to approve change order number 1 for CD Technical Services relative to contract number R15-021101, various parks ADA compliance for additional professional services in the amount of $24,400 for a revised contract amount of $181,400.
Councilman Gilbert.
This is one I was talking about. Does this have the details of who will receive this on this particular resolution?
This contract is a professional services contract, CD Technical Services, and the owner of that contract, they're the ones that have been performing the assessment. And this change order is related to the addition of Frost Stadium to this particular contract. The original scope included park facilities only, but there was a request from YFD to assess Frost Stadium in advance of a tournament that's coming. So this provides that assessment, and also will provide some construction administration services for those repairs in advance of that tournament.
I understand Frost Stadium, but is there any other part included by name in this resolution?
The Frost Stadium is the only one that's added in this change order.
I know it's added, but before it was added, is there any other what other parks is in there besides Frost Stadium?
I'll have to see if that list. I don't know that list is included in this material, and I don't have that list specifically with me, but I'll be glad to look through the backup materials.
Yeah, 'cause I don't remember seeing the one I referred to a few minutes ago on that list. That's why I was curious of. Has it been done yet? If it has not been done, why it was included into this list?
All the documents that I see as part of the backup material only relate to Frost Stadium. You asked earlier about Lakeside, and I'll be glad to look into that in order to understand that. But I can't specifically answer the question on the original list of parks because it's not included with this material today.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it, Councilman, you good? Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to M, please.
A resolution authorizing the third of 5 payments to Hamilton County GIS relative to GIS addressing for fiscal year 2020, with future compensation to be negotiated on an annual basis as noted in the city-county addressing MOU dated May 19, 2006, for an amount not to exceed $68,100.
Okay, seeing no lights, that concludes December 3rd. Now we'll move on to next week item for Tuesday, December the 10th, resolution, which has a number of blanks. Do you have that information to fill in those blanks?
I do. I'd be happy to read from the resolution request. It was sent over earlier today, but I believe that the amount of time between the strategic planning session and the agenda session, I don't believe the attorney's office had an opportunity to be able to make the revision to that. But the resolution request that has been submitted by the department says to authorize the administrator to award the contract W17-024201 for the Moxon Bend Wastewater Treatment Plant Renewable Energy Project to Inman Solar Incorporated of Atlanta, Georgia, in the amount of $4,456,667, plus a contingency amount of $450,000.
Okay. Any questions on that, Council, now that we have that information? Okay. Okay, Vice Chairman Henderson.
Bill, remind me again where the money was coming out of for this project.
This is all coming from interceptor sewer funds.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Councilman Gilbert.
Yeah, real briefly, it is in this contract, the names of the centers is on page.
It doesn't have a page number on here.
It's in between, got 20 pages, it's in there, different centers. I don't see the one I referred to. I need to find out what happened on that one.
It's got 603-1 on the bottom in the center.
Where are you at? Did y'all?
He's back.
Oh. Okay, for the record, back to where?
Back to, hold on.
To L on resolution?
Huh?
To L on resolution?
Resolution, okay.
Right.
Thank you. Okay. Is that it? You good? Okay. If there's no other questions, no other lights, we are through with Public Works and Transportation. Okay. Okay. Thank you. We're good. Okay, just to get us cranked up here, we're now in Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. Move to approve the minutes. And now we have our Planning and Zoning Committee. Chair. Oh,
You did say attorney.
Yeah. I got to be over there for this one. Minutes been approved, so you can start.
You're doing all right. You're doing all right. Good afternoon. You're doing well, sir. What? Yeah. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Planning and Zoning. I do thank you for the minute approval. John, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself, sir?
A little raspy voice today.
Uh-oh.
So you can make fun of me later, but we'll do this. We're going to kick off ordinances on first reading. Under planning, here we are again, John.
Yes, sir. We've seen this case a few times.
Once or three? Five.
Just a quick, I won't provide a complete, if we could have the PDF. Thank you. Just while that's coming up, just a quick update. Councilman Mitchell has forwarded an email to the attention of the city attorney's office. I think he's ready to proceed ahead with this request. He did ask that instead of just lifting the condition, it be replaced, and I'll just kind of read it for the record so you have it. What he would like to replace that condition is the applicant will work with the City of Chattanooga Department of Transportation to help develop a pedestrian transportation route between East Manning and Oliver Street on Tucker Street. So I think the idea there is to provide a little more flexibility in terms of how that happens as opposed to a specific location. And so I think he's asked the city attorney to assist, I guess, whatever way we can to
Yeah.
Is that fair?
We have prepared an alternate version. Y'all just need to place it on your agenda if that's what you want to deal with this evening as the alternate version.
Okay.
I move that we place that alternate version on our agenda.
Do you have a motion? And a second. We good, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, sir.
All right. We are good to go forward. Okay. We could, I'll use this now. Next week, December 10th, John, ordinances on first reading, item planning A, case number 0159. This one also has a little wrinkle in it. I think, as I understand it, the applicant has requested a withdrawal of this request, but it is on the council agenda, so it'll take action to remove it. I don't know whether you want to do it here at the committee or next week. I'll turn that over to y'all from a process perspective. Can we do that here? We have to do that, council.
You should do that during a public
we'll do that.
meeting on there.
We'll do that in the meeting. Okay.
Once it's on the agenda.
So you want me to just kind of cover the highlights of it? Honestly, no. Okay. Dang. No, I heard it last month, and I don't want, anybody wants to hear it again. Man, okay, I'm real popular. Right? Let's keep going, John. We're having fun. All right, we keep rocking and rolling along. Just keep, all right, I'll keep it building, keep the suspense building. All right, this next request is to rezone a piece of property. Let me get my notes. I'm sorry, just 1 second. I misplaced, just 1 minute. Underneath my notebook. Is to rezone a piece of property located at 600 block of Airport Road from R3 residential zone to R4, R3 and R4 to M2 light industrial zone in order to build office warehouse units. This property is located between, if you're familiar with this area, it's just south of the airport, between Nolan Lane and Pinehurst Avenue. Currently has a residential structure on it, but as you can see, it's surrounded by a mix of actually residential and commercial structures. If you look at the zoning of the area, it also has a mix of zones, including C2, M2, R4, R3, and M1. So it already has a mix. They're requesting M2, which is not out of character for the zoning in the area. There, you can see that the closest M2 zone is just to the west of the site. It had been applied back in 2019 for M2 manufacturing zone, but I think they withdrew it to wait the outcome of the planning process. The pending adoption of the Airport District Master Plan recommends light industrial mix, which supports this zone type, so staff recommend to approve. At Planning Commission, there was no opposition. They concurred with staff's recommendation to approve. So it comes with a recommendation approved from staff and Planning Commission. Very good. Councilman Gilbert, I see your light.
Yeah, hey, John, I remember he came here and said there's going to be office space and things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
The site plan, does it say that? 'Cause I never did see it.
Yeah, they would have, as you know, this is part of, there's an overlay, there's an airport overlay district that we created about 1.5 years ago,
Right.
so that's going to drive how they build that site out. It has standards for signage, landscaping, how you place your parking in your building.
Sidewalks?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But did he say specifically what's going to be there?
He did not provide a specific use, no.
You got information that I can contact him or he can call me?
I'd be happy to forward that to you. Yes, sir.
I appreciate it.
You good, Councilman?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. John, I see no other lights. Let's move on to C. Just want to kind of make this note so I don't forget. Okay. All right. Here we go. This is a request to rezone a piece of property from R1 to R4 to accommodate a temporary services staffing agency and a residence at the same property. There also, this site has had some history as well. Going back to 1997, it was actually rezoned from R1 to O1 with some conditions. Then in 2018, it was rezoned back from O1 to R1 to enable to use as a single-family dwelling. Now they're trying to expand their uses to include temporary staffing services, and that's why they need the R4. There's a mismatch of zones and uses in this area. The requested zone is consistent with the comp plan development policy and the use mix, so we recommended approval. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. Planning Commission concurred with staff's recommendation to approve.
Very good. Councilman, you still have the mic.
Thank you, sir. John, this is also the same way. So are you saying that they want to put a business and have a
Let me go back.
house next to it, a trailer next to it, or what next to it?
Basically they call it temp staffing agency and residence, is what they noted on their application. I can forward you the application again if you'd like, and their contact info if you want to.
Yeah, yeah, do that for me, and also their contact information. And did they say, you said a call center, things of that nature?
Not a call center, a temporary staffing agency, so it's like for people who need support staffing services. So not a call center.
The housing was getting me. Why? What's the housing part?
Well, that's kind of, the mix. A lot of folks, it's kind of live work where you live there and also have a business on your property. And given the location, again, going back to the location.
Like Cromwell.
Yeah, it's got a mix of uses there already. So I guess staff did like in terms of the mix of uses that R4 and what the uses are allowed are pretty consistent with the variety of uses you've got in that immediate area.
So the North Brainerd Council Plan, does it support this?
This is actually outside of that.
Is it?
Yes. To the north of it.
Go over to Jersey Pike. My understanding was.
I can check again, but to our knowledge, it's outside.
Okay. Yeah, check and make sure, because I think
All right.
last time we spoke, it was all the way to Lightfoot Mill Road.
Okay, I will look into that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments, Councilman?
No, sir, thank you.
You got it, sir. Thank you. All right, John,
Okay.
you done making notes? You good?
Yes, I'm doing
All right.
this.
Sorry, I'm moving you along.
Yes, sir. And it's getting late in the afternoon, isn't it?
Item D, please, sir.
All right. This is a request to rezone from R2 residential zone to RTZ for a small lot residential development detached, about 18 lots. This is located in the Shepherd community, just north of the Shepherd YFD Center. Here's a zoom in on it. Currently has, again, the property is currently vacant. It is surrounded by, I would say, large lot residential. You do have the Coca-Cola facility, bottling facility in the back, distribution center. Again, you can see the predominant zoning in the area is R2. Not a lot of recent zoning history. There was a request to zone to R4 back in 2004. That was recommended by both staff and Planning Commission to deny. And as we know, the Coca-Cola bottling facility was zoned to M1 and not too long ago. Just to compare the zones, R2 has a lot size of 7,500 square feet. You get a little bit smaller with your RTZ, smaller lot frontage, so you get a bit higher density. In RTZ, you can get about 24 dwelling units per acre max, whereas in R2, it's 18. So that was really staff's main concern, was not the use, but the density. And the plan recommended low-density residential for this location, so that's why staff recommended to deny. At Planning Commission, there was no opposition. Planning Commission, after reviewing staff's recommendations and hearing from the applicant, recommended to approve the RTZ, just capping the total density at 18 lots. So it comes with a recommendation to approve from Planning Commission.
Very good. Thank you, John. Dr. Burrs, I see your light.
Thank you. John, one of the questions I've got, and it goes with Councilman Gilbert's question about item B, is that site plans aren't tied to zoning.
Yes, that's
People
correct.
can give us a site plan, and then it gets approved, and then they can do whatever they want.
That's right.
So we've had a number of neighborhood meetings on these, and the community's very, very much behind it. I met with the developers and told them that in order for approval, that I would like to see a site plan, because the community is trusting that they're going to do what they said they were going to do. So far, I've not received that. Have you?
This is their site plan here on the screen. The condition would limit the number of units to 18. My only caution on, clearly if you're doing a PUD, a site plan is pretty formally as part of a resolution, but if you're doing a zone, if you attach this site plan as a condition, and where's Dallas, or here's Charles? You mind just back me up on this one, because I'll make sure you kind of think about what this means. If if we attach this site plan as a condition, my understanding then is if lot lines change in any shape, way, or form, they would need to amend it, have a zoning code, right?
They would have to. When they would submit to our office for permitting, we would require the condition in that site plan to be attached. And if it deviated from the site plan with the set of plans that was presented to us, we would require them to come back before this body to have that condition amended before we would ever even accept those plans.
So the reason I mentioned that is so even if you're moving a lot line, so, and that's why we had the condition of 18 units, because I thought the idea was to make sure in terms of RTZ maximum build out that was limited no more than 18, so that provides some control over how intensely it's developed, but it provides some flexibility, because a lot of times there's no engineering that's been done on this site plan yet, so after they do their detailed land use survey, site survey, some lot lines might move. And that's why I just be cautious. I mean, sometimes, again, a site planning will be good in terms of predictability. Just know that as you get downstream and you're doing your actual site engineering, things could change, and then you're back on a 3-month process to address any changes to that.
Well, that's got to be their problem.
Okay.
The bottom line is that they represented to a community they were going to do a certain thing.
Okay.
And I don't know that the community has even seen that. What we saw at the meeting was kind of a rough drawing of things.
So it wasn't even this?
Huh?
It wasn't even this?
No, I haven't seen this. And it's fine, but they represented, because the reason the community was behind it, because it would increase property values. They represented a whole lot to the community, and it sounded good.
Okay.
I just want to make sure they do what they said they were going to do.
Gotcha.
So this is the best way to do it, correct?
What I would, as an alternative to think about, there's 2 ways you can do it. I mean, one is the site plan. But just know that when you adopt the site plan, it covers the street is exactly shown, the lot lines is exactly shown. So any departure in lot widths, lot lines would trigger it coming back to council. What the condition that's already on the suggested would limit to 18 units max. It says you might have some flexibility in how you configure your lots, because there are standards in the zone in terms of minimum widths. But we're saying no matter what, you get a maximum of 18 residential units on that site. So it just depends on what level of, do you want to say exactly build that as is shown, or are you comfortable with limiting the total yield to 18 units, period?
Because some developers are not as ethical as others. I'm
Gotcha.
not saying it's these people.
Sure.
You tell me, what is the best way to make sure that the people in this community get what they were promised in order to back the change
Sure.
in zoning?
I would think from a residential perspective, you're most concerned about what is the total yield in terms of what that zone will produce, because that is what generates the impact on adjacent neighborhoods. Whether you have a 60-foot lot on one and versus a 70 on another, I'm not sure that is as big a public concern as what am I expecting in terms of total number of units that are going to be built on that property. That's what I would offer as things that you would more likely want to control at this level.
Can we condition to the other things that they put forward?
Sure, if there's other elements that you think that are relate to, what would be some of the other things you think that might?
Well, I don't want to belabor this.
Sure.
The bottom line is they represented to a community that they were going to do certain things. This becomes very important to the Shepherd community.
Sure.
We're trying to turn a community around, okay? At zoning, afterwards, I was out in the hall with them and said, we've not seen a site plan,
Right.
and all this stuff. And there was a little bit of backpedaling.
Gotcha.
The bottom line is, I need to be able, it's my job to
Sure.
protect what was represented. So you're telling me that if we don't tie it to a site plan, well, wait a minute, this is their site plan.
That's right. This is what they gave us.
Fine, they should do it.
Got it.
Okay.
Understood. So just to make sure you direct the attorney's office, if you want that added to the ordinance, we need to make sure that's clear direction to the city attorney.
Sure. And And let me
Yes.
ask you one other thing, and that is under B that my colleague was talking about.
Yes.
It's the same thing. These people should put in a site plan that attaches to what this warehouse office use thing is, because we've spent years
Right.
with this trying to turn around the Airport Road area, this whole Shepherd Airport Road area,
Right.
and we need to hold to it.
Understood.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burrs. So let me take a quick pause, John. I don't see any other lights. Obviously, this is a subject we brought up in strategic planning.
Yes. I'm picking that up.
Be ready to further this conversation.
I've noticed
on
it
the
will-
relevance and site plan as I am digging into a particular case myself.
Yes.
And I think it's an important conversation because what the public is shown and what is told in the brochure marched out in front of them
Right.
is I do not want them ever to feel like we are standing behind false advertising at any point.
Understand completely.
And I think so we're going to continue that conversation, and I applaud both my colleagues for bringing it up today.
Could I offer on that one, if it's okay, sir, to say maybe at whatever your next appropriate time of your strategic plan, we'll come back, and maybe that's where myself, Brian, and we'll partner with LDO, talk about maybe a way of thinking about when, just some things to think about as you think about when you want to attach a site plan versus a written condition, so as kind of more of a resource guide for council. Okay. Thank you, sir.
You got it. Dr. Burrs, you good?
I'm good.
Thank you. You ready to go on to E, John?
Yes. The projector went to sleep on me. It's on. Can you advance it? Okay. This is a request to rezone from R4 to C2 to accommodate a proposed kennel. There's already a vet facility operating at this location. This is next to the Udawal High School out in the Udawal area. Again, if you look at the zoning of the area, it's got a mix of R1, M2, and R4, so it's a mix of zones. There are no residential uses in this area. It's basically a school, some commercial and industrial uses at this location. Just for a little bit of history, when this property was annexed in 2003, it was rezoned to R1. Then later in 2008, it was rezoned from R1 to R4 for basically an animal hospital vet facility. But note that it did not include a kennel. And really the zone that you need to operate a kennel is a C2 zone, and that's why they're applying for this zone. Looking at the Wolf Teever plan, it did recommend office institutional at this location. But as you, again, going back to the zoning, if you look at the actual zoning pattern in the area, you've already got some industrial and a school facility. So for staff, we didn't have as much issue with the use. We just thought the zone maybe need to be tailored a little bit to fit the site. So we recommended to approve with all the uses permitted in R4 and pet boarding, kenneling only. So it's consistent with what the mix of uses in the area. At Planning Commission, there was no opposition, and Planning Commission concurred with staff's recommendation to approve with those conditions.
Very good. Thanks, John. Dr. Burrs, you good? All right, moving on.
Okay. This is, the next we're talking about is the Austin site. Fairly large site, over 100 acres. This location is being requested to rezone from M1 to form-based code zones. As much of you all are very much aware, there is a monthly process involving Dover Coal Associates to plan the transformation of this site, looking at a really transformational development program for the riverfront adjacent to downtown, showing mixed-use development and public park amenities. But the issue we had at the end of that process was what zone tool do we use? Currently, the property is zoned M1. We met with the applicants, asked us to come to a meeting in late May to look at zone tool options, and really there's just two. At the time, it'd be C3 with conditions or some adaptation of form-based code. We spent the summer meeting, several meetings with the applicants, looking at how form-based code can and could not work with the development program. Basically, we came out of those series of meetings understanding the need to create context zone option for form-based code to where you can establish a context for large sites. And we did that, as you know, in October. Council adopted an amendment to form-based code for any large site. We have several in the pipeline, if you think about it. We have this site, we have West Side, we have Wheel and Foundry site. There's several large sites where it's not clear, or it's not clear what form-based code context works best for a large site. And so we wanted to create a tool where somebody who's doing a planned development on a large site to establish the appropriate zones and for their development program. So we created that tool, and essentially has a set of things that can be done within that tool. You can establish a context area. You can establish the proposed zones under the form-based code framework. You can propose modifications to the table, height, and development standards for those zones. And if you opt in to provide street standards. So the applicant, as soon as this tool is created, submitted to us their application for establishing a new context area called the Bend. That initial proposal showed this following zoning concept. Most of the site would be zone CX12. There would be an opportunity for a CX20 at the southwestern corner of the site. And you can see the center portion of showing a park zone where they're proposing to have a major park in the middle of their development. So again, those elements, the new context area, 2 new zones. I do want to commend the applicants. I think one of the new innovations that they offered as part of this is to actually establish a set of street prototypes that would establish street standards to create a great quality public realm that goes with their proposed development program. The modifications they proposed were really patterned after the downtown CX zone with some tweaks, and I've just highlighted those here. Essentially 5 major, I'll call them tweaks. One is to give a greater range of lot types. Their development program is including a wide range of both residential and commercial and industrial uses, and the CX zone really does not give much flexibility in the downtown area for providing multifamily residential on the lower end of intensity, and they want to have that flexibility to do both basically like townhouses as well as multi-story apartment buildings within their site. They also added some more flexibility to provide an additional 5 feet for front setbacks. That's to accommodate, again, if you're doing a townhouse type development, you want to be able to set that further back and not put it on the street like a shop front building. Also increased their parking setbacks on the side yard by 5 feet, and actually that's adding an additional standard on their end in terms of, again, making sure there's transition between parking and adjacent parcels so that there's some separation there. They also proposed some minor changes to the land use table to allow for multi-unit and residential and commercial uses, as I said before, as well as utilities, because they do have some utilities on the site, and their development program, which includes outdoor recreation and entertainment. Those weren't formally addressed by form-based code, and they need to add those elements to make it work. And finally, the last piece is to have no minimum off-street parking. What they're trying to do is get the best economy of development, where it's a rich urban development. It's very walkable, and to do that, you've got to have some flexibility in terms of how you do your parking. So those were the major changes that they submitted. Staff did not have any concerns with those. Just want to give you some highlights on the street network plan. They show here, again, adding a network of streets, and you can really see how they're beginning to bring that same grain that's present in our downtown to the riverfront in terms of streets and alleys and a grid that's very walkable, very accessible. Consistent with the rest of the form-based code, they're proposing what's called A and B streets, and essentially that just means what are your main streets, speaking of Main Street, and they're showing West Main being a continuation from where it stops currently to continue through the site all the way to the riverfront, taking advantage of that vista. So they show, again, those A streets. Those are your primary addresses where you want to have your buildings closer to the street and your walkability there. They also included a street atlas. And here are some, I just want to give you an overview of the different street types. They're actually proposing a canal street to create a waterfront amenity within the development and, to go with the streetscape, as well as a boulevard and pedestrian streets. So a wide variety of street types to accommodate the development program. This is the site plan they showed. I'm sure which again shows a mix of uses to go with their street network. In addition to the open space network. So again, think about all those elements, how they work together, the building types, the streets, the public spaces to create a walkable urban experience. And here's, again, some images that were submitted by the applicant showing their proposal for the site. So staff, when we looked at the request, we looked at it basically through the lens of the zone and the zone request. And so to kind of inform our review of that, we looked at adopted plan policy, which is the downtown plan, and prior zoning case history. So looking at the downtown plan, which was adopted in 2006, it recommended a maximum height at the downtown of roughly around 200 feet or 20 stories, and basically kind of scaling down from that from the CBD. And it noted that riverfront, the desire to try to maintain a 75-foot maximum height along the riverfront, again, to maintain views of the river. And that's kind of followed the pattern up to this point through prior zoning cases. We've had a number of zoning cases, if you're familiar, just to the north of this site for C3, where it's been approved with a maximum height of 70 feet or 6 to 7 stories. That's kind of been the pattern up to this point in terms of maximum heights. So staff, we were supportive of the form, the mix of uses, certainly creating a new form-based code context and proposed standards, a much better tool than the C3 with conditions. Our only concern had to do with the height, and so that's where we had recommended deferral at Planning Commission for 30 days to follow up with the applicant to talk a little more about that. At Planning Commission, however, there was no opposition. Planning Commission actually supported the proposed heights and recommended to approve. So it moved on through Planning Commission with a recommendation to approve. However, after hearing staff's comments at the report, the applicant recently submitted a revised proposal showing reducing those heights a little bit to create some better transition. I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of that. They're showing basically a 5-story limit going back 150 feet from Riverfront Parkway. That's where you've got those existing 4- and 5-story buildings along that edge to maintain consistency. Then as you get back into the site, it bumps up to CX10, and then you have CX16 at that other key site there on the corner. So that is what the applicant is showing us, kind of their alternative plan based on hearing from staff's comments and action from Planning Commission. Now I'll turn it over to y'all for questions.
John, that was pretty quick, actually. Congratulations. I do have about 18 lights. So
18 lights,
yep,
great.
So buckle in.
Okay.
We're going to start with Chairman Oglesby.
Yes, sir.
What was the reasoning for reducing the height?
From the
applicant's version that was overwhelmingly approved at RPA and to now? Because that's, I've been involved with this project for quite some time, and
sure,
I was sort of perplexed when I saw this.
Well, I think, as I understand it, hearing comments from the applicant at the PC meeting, they heard staff's concerns, and I think they agreed to work with staff, and to maybe tweak it, as I recall. But you're right, it was unanimously approved at Planning Commission. And I think really this is just the applicant on their own initiative. Didn't have to do this, but in response to some of staff's comments, submitted an alternative recommendation that showed, trying to create a little more transition from some of the adjacent surrounding areas.
And the adjacent surrounding area would be what, downtown?
That would be, if you look at, along Riverfront Parkway, that area is predominantly there's kind of 4 stories maximum currently along that area. So that kind of creates a transition. So, you like to try to have the same heights on the same street. And so, as I understand the applicant, the reason for, and they could certainly answer this more next week, they need the CX10 to provide the flexibility. They're not planning on building the entire site out at that level. It's just if they've got a client that needs that type of product, they have the ability to do it. So I think they still have most of the site as CX10 that gives them that flexibility. Also note, by the way, through the form-based code, you can get actually additional story through the form-based code committee. So actually you could technically up to 11 stories potentially. So I think really they just did that after hearing some of staff's comments.
Well, this is a process question. Okay, it was voted on and overwhelmingly approved.
Yes, sir.
At planning.
Yes.
So does that mean we have to do an amendment here or what? Because, I'm struggling with that.
Sure, yes, sir. I think my thought would be an alternative version that the city attorney can then add to the agenda.
And the Planning Commission makes recommendations. They do not pass legislation. This body passes the legislation, so you could have an amended version.
Okay, now where would that amended version come from? One of us? or
Yes, sir.
what? Okay. All right, I'll yield.
Yes, sir. You good, Chairman?
Yeah, I'm good at the moment.
Councilman Gilbert, I have your light next, please.
Yeah, I was curious. John, is this part of the opportunity zone?
I believe it is, yes.
It is? Jermaine, can you give me the definition of opportunity zone again? Thank you, sir.
Thought you were gonna get away with that.
Yes, so the opportunity zones were created in President Trump's tax reform bill, which basically allow for areas to receive additional economic development that are focus areas that were designated by local governments with the help of state governments.
Is it, I remember, was his name Carter? What's the doctor's name?
I'm sorry, who?
The doctor itself that actually was over this, that created it, the one that had the brain surgeon.
Oh, Dr. Ben Carson
Yeah,
with
Carson.
Housing and Urban Development.
I remember seeing a
this
pro-
actually originated from the Department of Treasury.
Yeah, I remember hearing him saying something about it's designed to help low end to kind of move up or have opportunities. Is that basically what I'm saying it correctly?
Well, I think that when the federal legislation looked at the creation of the opportunity zones, they did look at ways to attract capital to parts of cities that have been disinvested or parts of cities that had not traditionally received economic development dollars or parts of cities that had not historically seen investment over long periods of time. However, it is true that local officials in working with state governments have also been able to work to designate what opportunity zones in each city, because the federal government obviously doesn't want to preempt cities from creating their own opportunity zones and designating the areas that they feel would be most beneficial in attracting economic development.
So this is not based off the theory that Ben Carson had when it comes to low income, trying to get them more prosperous and.
Well, not necessarily. So if you look at the opportunity zones within the city of Chattanooga, our opportunity zones do include areas that have low income census tracts. So there are parts of the opportunity zones that are in the city of Chattanooga, for example, that expand into parts of East Chattanooga and Alton Park. It also includes the west side. So this, to my knowledge, the former Alstom site lies in the same sort of general vicinity of the west side, which is also would be a low income area.
So the owners, I don't know if they hear or not,
right?
The plan that they have,
uh-huh.
Is it fitted in the theme of what Ben Carson was talking about, for us giving people opportunities at low income, and will these people will they be still there? I know you mentioned West Side, but you know everybody talk about West Side here, and they're not here, and they should be there. But I'm trying to see, is this going to fit into the give opportunity for people that would not have opportunity to grow in the city?
Well, I don't know that I can answer that, because they are still a long way, I think, from seeing development come into the former Alstom site. So there's no way for me to anticipate what potential development they're going to see or who's going to benefit from that.
Can you mention it to them that I know I'm concerned about that, as far as can they include that? Because I think the theory and the theme behind that was trying to prevent give opportunity to ones that wouldn't have opportunity in the first place to actually prosper, along with big business.
Sure. What I would just ask.
Can I jump in here real quick? If
Yeah.
we have a zoning question related to this case, can we kind of stick to the mechanics of that, please?
Sure.
We're in an entirely different conversation right now.
Okay.
Okay.
I will.
If it's zoning related, I would like to stick with zoning related questions, please.
Councilman, I'm happy to talk to you
I apologize.
after
but-
Just relay that message to them for me.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Oh, they are? I talked to you afterwards then.
That would be great. Thank you, Councilman. Dr. Burrs, I see your light.
John, it's been my privilege to be part of this in heart and discussion in this great project for quite a while. So it makes me kind of sad that the iconic building or the height of the buildings were changed, but this was solely at the discretion of the applicants?
I mean, they sent me the revised map. As I understand it, basically they had some comments based on, as a follow-up to the planning commission meeting, heard what staff's concerns, they would be getting back with staff. And so
I remember the excitement. I know there were some staff that were against it, but I remember the excitement of the planning commission.
Sure.
So this is something that needs to happen in our community. It's a really, really exciting project.
Agreed.
And I just wanted to make sure that it was instigated by the developers. I would respect whatever they wanted to do,
Sure,
but
I
I just
understand that
needed to
point.
know a little bit more about that. So they want to lower the heights of the buildings.
To let them answer that question for you. I can't speak on their behalf.
Is what?
I'll
No, I
have to
mean,
let
they
them-
told you they wanted to
Yes,
lower the...
that was what was submitted to me via email, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burrs. Councilman Henderson, I see your light, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I guess, Dr. Burrs, we'll have a chance maybe next week to ask the applicant during when the applicant has an opportunity to come up. John, what zones changed in the heights? I mean, how is what you're presenting right here,
Yeah.
how is this different from what past planning commission?
Sure, it was CX12, and so it went from CX12 to CX10, and it was CX20 for the yellow portion. So it went
Okay.
from CX20 to CX16.
And when it went through, what was the staff recommendation?
Defer.
Staff's recommendation was to defer,
Yes, sir.
but it went on to planning commission anyway?
Yeah, I mean, that's not uncommon that, we have a case. And again, staff was thinking more 6 to 8 stories based on current policy. Planning commission, in their review of it, did not have an issue with height like staff had expressed, and so they moved it on to council. And at that point, there's still that, there's this.
So after it passed planning,
Let me go
the applicant just wrote you and said, hey, we're going to lower the heights of our buildings.
That was submitted to us, yes.
Okay. All right, well, we'll talk next week.
Sure.
You good, Councilman?
Thank you.
I don't see any other lights. I do have a couple of questions for you, John.
Yes.
If in the original plan that Planning Commission was so excited about, as my colleagues alluded to, if there was a applicant or a project that required an additional height, then walk us through what would happen and
Sure.
who that goes to and
Sure,
whose
be happy to.
responsibility that would fall on.
Sure. That would be, if you wanted to add one story, you would make a request to the Form-Based Code Committee. So the Form-Based Code Committee would review that and make a decision whether to approve the additional one story.
So this would go on to a non-elected governing, or a non-elected board,
Yes.
basically to make a pretty monumental decision on who came in and who didn't.
Yes.
Just want to make sure we're clear on that. The second question is, and it's interesting, several of my colleagues have hit on something I'm picking up on, and that is, this was very enthusiastically approved at
Mhm.
Planning Commission. And I'm just wanting to make sure that I understand that the restrictions, the changes, were completely 100% directed from the applicant.
Right.
And John, I'm just going to be honest, as most people know, that I'm not very good at politics, so to speak.
Sure.
But I'm going to call a little bullshit.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
I'm sorry, Chief. Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
I just don't think that's, I think there's more to it
Sure.
And I think that, I think there's some more questions that we probably need to ask, and I think it's very interesting the way it all come down, and it's very interesting that my colleagues are picking up on some things as well and asking some questions, so, but, you know, it is what it is. So I will end with that, and I guess at this point, Chairman Oglesby, I do see a light here.
You know, this area being new and unique, we're not comparing it to anything else because to me, this is an opportunity to go to another level and show how nimble we can be in attracting economic development and businesses that we haven't seen for a long time. So are we treating this area as unique, or are we trying to compare it to what already exists?
I think, you're going to hate this answer, but a little bit of both. What I mean by that, let me say, if I might answer that completely. You're right that it is unique and that it is a large site, and it is a huge and a unique part of the area. But it also operates in a context in terms of how it relates to the downtown core. So on the one hand, yes, it's so large that it's in some ways, that's why we established this whole process to create a context. But like anything, as you know, when we're approving a zone, ultimately it's a zone and it sets precedent. So while it is unique, it does set precedent for what happens in sites around it. As you know, we have the West Side community right next door. We have Wheel and Foundry site. So my only guidance I would offer you as you all think about your decision is what you prove here does have application into what, think about West Side and Wheeling. So this is breaking new ground in terms of thinking about height. I don't know if y'all remember when we did the form-based code, there's a lot of conversations about height, and we had an in-depth conversation about how we think about the CBD and how things kind of scale down around adjacent neighborhoods. So that's why staff was taking a little more cautious tone, because while certainly this is an awesome project, the amount of investment and jobs and vision will be transformational, we're just going to be conscious of, okay, once you set this as far as the height here, it has implications for adjacent height. So we're starting to go substantially more vertical, which is something different in terms of the going out from downtown and going this tall.
Okay, so are these the original proposed height? How different is it to any of the heights of the buildings that's downtown?
There are certainly some buildings that get to 18 and 20. There are some examples of that, but there are a handful of buildings. So you just want to be mindful of when you approve a zone, what maximums you want to set. So for example, in the downtown form-based code, the current maximum is actually 12 stories in the CBD. So the form-based code area sets a max of 12 stories for the CBD. So when you, again, as you look at this, just be mindful of, and I think that's the conversation you're wrestling with is it okay to go CX10? The applicant had proposed CX12 originally.
So I keep hearing downtown, but I'm seeing something geographically different. Yeah,
Sure.
They're close, but it bothers me that, we're talking about downtown when, in essence, from my perspective, we should be talking about this area. And then when just say Wheeling and US Pipe, that's a whole nother conversation. So as long as the heights of the buildings is consistent with what we got, why should we deviate anything lower, especially when it has a potential to have more of an economic impact on our city and create opportunities for, a diverse group of people, which I see this project as being just that. You use the word transformational. It's exactly what it is for our city. It's transformational, and it's a transformation that we haven't seen since they started talking about the riverfront, which people, from what I understand, had some concerns, but look where it has gotten us today. Now, yeah, we need some modifications on it, but from my perspective, this is a independent project with a uniqueness that will let a lot of different companies and economic developers see just what we can do how flexible we can be, how nimble we can be in attracting those entities that's going to really take us to the next level. Because right now, we're, from my perspective, I'm sorry, but we're kind of stagnant. And we need something that's going to inject new energy and new blood into our city that's going to continue to make it grow. I've always said that if we're going to continue to grow as a city, we had to invest outside downtown. This far exceeds my vision of what that investment is. So I'm just really concerned about the modification of that height. And that's just more of a statement
Sure.
of just
I
me,
understand.
you know, trying to understand the whole complexity of how we got here today versus the excitement that we had at Planning Commission last month. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Burrs, you have one more comment?
I was sitting here thinking, it's precedent setting and could change the west side and everything. I'm saying, gosh, I hope so. You know, I have to agree with my colleague. We're a little stagnant. And this is the kind of project that could change the west side, could change the whole way we look and think at things. And I'm a little befuddled at the conversations that must have occurred, by whom I'm not sure, that would make this change. And so I guess maybe I have more to learn. But the change between what I saw at Planning Commission and what I'm seeing here, I'm thinking, what was the compromise? What was...
I think it was a response to some of staff's concerns about how do you, in a more nuanced way, look at height in relation to context.
You all do a great job. You do a wonderful job, and I respect staff concerns. But there was a whole planning commission there, and there's a whole council here, and I have nothing but respect for what you do.
Sure.
This is a little bit different, and so maybe we'll talk to the developers, you know, in between time to figure out, because I want to understand. I want this to happen, and I want it to happen in the right way. But I see this as a catalytic site, not one that challenges what already exists. And if it does, great, because some of what already exists needs help. So thank you. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Burrs. I see no other lights. So, John, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
In order to place this modified plan onto the agenda, you need to place it as an alternate version.
Yes.
Alongside of the original version.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and from that, you would need a motion from this
Yes.
body at this time?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm looking for, if anybody's interested, to place this as an alternate version, the proposed modifications.
Okay.
That's, yes.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
haven't actually heard from the applicant. We'll hear from him, if I'm correct, next week.
We'll have a public hearing on it.
Opportunity from that perspective to ask it out.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Dr. Burrs. Sure. So let me ask this to the city attorney for process. If no motion is made here today for a alternate version for applicant proposed modification, then where does that leave us next week when it goes on the agenda?
You'll have one version that was approved by the Planning Commission on the agenda. If there are any amendments to that, it'll take an additional time to get an amendment.
So an amendment could be made next week
Yes.
to adopt the proposed modification
Correct.
after the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
But it might potentially delay that if you have a first reading and you don't have it as amended on that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That being said, as chairman, I cannot make a motion, so I'm looking across the dais, and I'm not getting a motion.
Okay.
All right, John. Moving on to item G, please.
Yes, this is a request to rezone a property in Highland Park from R4 Special Zone to UGC General Commercial Zone for change of use from a school to residential development. This property is located in the 1600 block of East 12th Street. As you can see here again, the current site is zoned R4. The property it was part of the 2008 Highland Park study that rezoned it to R4 with conditions in the daycare center. As you can see here, the R4 special zone has a similar mix of uses to what the applicant's proposing. The problem is the setbacks in R4. There are more suburban setbacks, 25-foot setbacks and so on. That does not align with what they're trying to do with the site. So they're proposing to rezone the property with these conditions. They propose to restrict it to residential only, provide parking for all units off street, and then you can see the setbacks that they're proposing there. Staff, again, we're looking at this again. We're looking at the zone, not just the project. The zone, there's really not a precedent for zoning the interior of Highland Park to UGC. In the past, if you look at this site, we've done UGC. It's been around the perimeter, around the edges. You know, it's intended to be a zone. It's like along Macaulay or Main Street. Unfortunately, for them to redevelop as they're proposing, there's no other zone that will work for them to redevelop in the site. So that's why they need the UGC zone. So again, here's the site plan showing the existing building they're cutting up, and then you can see to the left and right, we propose some new structures for residential housing on either side of the existing school building. This is the more revised site plan that was submitted to us on September 27th, 2019. This again just shows you some images of the site. At Planning Commission, there was some opposition. There's let me go back just so you know. See the house in the lower right-hand corner? There's somebody who lives there who had some concerns about increasing the density of housing on this location, how it affects their home. So they're in opposition to that. But after hearing staff's recommendation and comments from the opposition, Planning Commission recommended to approve the UGC subject to these conditions you see listed here. Residential uses only, provide off-street parking for all units, revise the setbacks to better conform with the residential character of the existing neighborhood, so they included some setbacks there, and a maximum height of 35 feet. So it comes with you with the recommendation to approve from Planning Commission.
Very good. I am seeing no lights, so no questions on that one, John.
All right, this is in the North Brainerd community. This is a request to rezone from C5 to C2 to basically be able to sell beer sales for an existing convenience store. You can see the location here is off of the intersection of Ridgeside Drive and Gillespie Drive. It's been a corner store for quite some time. In fact, it was, if you go back to the zoning history, let me go back here. Is that right? There, yeah. In 2009, it was, actually, I'm sorry, I'll go back one. In 2009, it was rezoned from R1 to C5 with conditions. You see those conditions listed here. There are 7 conditions to kind of govern the operation of that location, including in a dumpster and how it should be operated, any lighting, hours of operation. All those things were included in that C5 to ensure compatibility with the neighborhood. There was a request back in 2009 to rezone it to C2. That was denied. In 2016, it was denied. It's been proposed again. Again, and the reason they need that C2 is to be able to do consumption of beer and alcohol. Off-site. Let me qualify that. Let me say it. I misstated myself. Sorry. To be able to purchase beer at the convenience store.
You just triggered a whole new set of conversations.
I'm sorry. I muddled that up. So again, looking at the North Brainerd Community Plan, recommended single-family residential. Staff, after knowing the zoning history of the site and the recommendation plan, recommended to deny. At Planning Commission, there was opposition. I would say there's probably, and this Councilwoman Coonrod can probably vouch this, there's both for and against this request. After hearing comments from the opposition and staff's recommendations, Planning Commission recommended to deny. I don't know, Councilwoman Coonrod, do you want me to share a little bit about our conversation, or do you want to add as far as it relates to your thoughts on this? Councilwoman Coonrod, you have it.
Thank you. Yeah, with our conversation, my concern was just, around some of the issues that they had with rezoning it. So I wanted to make sure those were taken care of as far as like lighting, making sure that it's still convenience store use in case that it's sold or anything like that. And as long as and they're okay with the conditions placed on there. But my only role is for the zoning. It's not, I don't add, if they can get a beer permit or anything like that, that's
Sure.
up to the beer board.
Sure.
So my focus is solely on the zoning, which I plan to do with conditions.
Okay. Do you want me to note those conditions, or just wait till?
Yes, you can note them.
Sure. So some of the conditions I had forwarded that to be considered that would go along with the C2 would be that the uses are limited to convenience store and related alcohol sales only for off-site consumption, retention of the existing building, no alcohol sales permitted after 9 p.m., no detached or pole-mounted signs permitted, and dumpster pickup shall be limited to the hours between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. So those are some of the things I know in terms of operating hours that we would do in a commercial zone in a neighborhood. So I just forwarded those to her for her consideration as y'all deliberate on that request.
And Attorney Reisman has suggested that there be a slight couple of changes.
Okay.
Because of the beer and alcohol revisions here, and he has recommended at least referencing beer and alcohol sales and no beer or alcohol sales permitted after a certain time. So,
Okay.
and that would need to be an alternate version if you want to consider that for next week. Okay, so you need to make a motion.
You want to make a motion for that, Councilwoman?
Yes.
You have the microphone.
What happened to my cotton piece? I'd like to make a motion to add the alternate version to the agenda next week.
And we have a second. Mr. Attorney, if you'll please make that happen.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anything else, Councilwoman? Fantastic. John, no other lights, so we will move into
Last but not least.
last but not least. This is a request for a PUD to accommodate a residential plan unit development that basically features some attached residential units. Let me get to my notes, y'all. I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up. Actually, I'll just slide through these. Okay. The site is on Shalford Road. Here's some images looking into the site. Again, the current zoning is R1. There is an RT zone just to the west of this site. That was approved not too long ago for a assisted living. Actually, I'm sorry, the R4 was for assisted living facility. But you do have RTZ zoning adjacent to this site. There was a request back in 2019 for R3. Staff recommended to deny that request because it was inconsistent with the adopted plan. The applicant withdrew that request at Planning Commission meeting. And then, of course, since resubmitted a PUD request. Just as a reminder, that the adopted East Brainerd Corridor Community Plan recommends a low-density residential. So, you can do a variety of residential types as long as the density does not exceed 5 units per acre. This was the proposed Pud Plan that was submitted for this request. The only thing to note as it relates to the Pud Plan is we had asked for that they basically define the open space better so it's clear about what's being protected as part of the Pud Plan. And Planning Commission, after hearing from, there was no opposition. I know Councilman Ledford had a number of meetings speaking with community residents about some concerns about the site. And he had recommended, which was supported by Planning Commission, some conditions that would, in terms of what was shown on the Pud Plan. And you see those 7 conditions there. One is a PUD being submitted prior to City Council action. I spoke with the applicant later this afternoon. I understand they want a 2-week deferral. I believe that's correct. So they can kind of finalize and comply with that condition of providing a revised PUD plan. And you can see the other conditions provide a 40-foot setback along Shalford Road. If streets of development are private, provide a gated entrance, but ensure there's adequate room for a turnaround because there is some site distance issues at that location, as I understand it. And you can see example possibility of having one entrance only with the entrance aligning with Arborville Lane, dedicate right-of-way and construct a deceleration lane, limit to 90 units, and providing a clubhouse and pool. So those are the 7 conditions that were approved, recommended by Planning Commission to go with that PUD plan.
Very good. John, I'll jump in here since this is in my district. There's probably a few more changes that we're going to work through with the rest of the week, so
Okay.
be prepared for a new site plan and also a couple of other condition changes, and I'll make those present and known at the public hearing. John, we did have a planning item for a SEP for an existing liquor store on item D.
Yes, that, I will just provide this is, led by the city attorney's office. As my understanding, this is just, is a change of ownership, so they're just trying to renew it because there's a change of ownership. So I had no formal presentation plan on that.
Very good, and I don't see any lights from Councilman Smith, so I'm assuming you're good. Fantastic. All right, John, we are at the end of that. You're going to give us an update on December, I believe, 17th?
Yes, I think we're locked in for, I think we're trying to kick it off around 9:30-ish, a 2-hour tour. We'll end up, we're going to tour some sites in the city. Due to the time constraints, we won't be able to go citywide because, as you know, we want to spend some adequate time at each location. So we're probably going to visit about 4 sites for the tour for the steep slope floodplain assessment. So we're going to try to hit, it's probably going to be North Chattanooga, Mountain Creek Road, and St. Elmo, because we're trying to hit an area that we can cover in a 2-hour window. And so we're going to try to, again, our goal is to show both sites that have been some challenges and some that have done a better job, so you can get a feel for kind of sites where it's been, where there's some clear issues, and other sites where there's clearly a good job being done in terms of development on a sensitive site. And then we'll come back here, have lunch, and I've gotten clear orders from your staff about what you would like for lunch, so we'll be taking care of that. And then we will then have an orientation on enforcement, because I know there's a lot of questions about how enforcement's taking place. So Brian has a short overview presentation, which will be followed by LDO staff, and they'll share with you about what they're doing in terms of enforcement, and hopefully that'll be a good educational session for you as council.
Very good. Are we going to meet here, John?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good. 9:30.
When I say here, meaning
over where?
in the conference room.
In the conference room?
Yes, sir.
Very good. 9:30 on the 17th. Bring your hiking boots.
Hopefully we won't do
appropriately.
any trenching through the mud. That's not our plan.
It's December.
Yeah. Yeah, just in case you would not want to wear your dress shoes. That's probably, at least have shoes you can change out in. That's probably
December
good.
and steep slopes.
Yes,
I don't
sir.
know. Come prepared, ladies and gentlemen. I have a couple lights before you
Okay.
take your books and go home.
Oh, wow, man.
Councilman Gilbert? There you go,
John,
sir.
Yes, sir.
real quick, on the, when we go out next week, on the places that you mentioned, is some of these places floodplains?
At least one site will be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Coonrod, I see your light is on.
Thank you. I just got a request on the lunch. I just want to make sure there's going to be items on there for me to eat. I'm a turkey person. I'm not a hummus and all that other stuff.
All that kind of food.
Yeah, just make sure, I get a good sandwich.
Turkey,
Yeah.
gotcha. Turkey.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Also, John, just to the, I don't see the press here, I see over here, but the press is invited, so everyone knows on open.
Yes, and I think
they're welcome to come along.
Yes, we'll coordinate with the city attorney and make sure that folks know to be there who want to be there.
Sure, very good. John, I see nothing else for planning and zoning today. If no other comments, I will adjourn us until 6.
All right.
Yes, ma'am. Equal business opportunity. No, that doesn't sound correct.